Imagine this: a purple bicycle tossed deep inside a cornfield, a single bloody sock, and a trail of motorcycle tracks leading straight toward a man, with scratches on his face and a past so dark it feels impossible. What happened to 19-year-old Sierah Joughin on that warm July evening would leave an entire community shattered and expose a predator who had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Sierah Catherine Joughin was born on February 11, 1996, in Sylvania, Ohio, to Sheila Vakulik and Tom Joughin. She grew up in the quiet village of Metamora, surrounded by family, friends, and the small-town warmth she loved so much. To the people closest to her, she wasn't Sierah, she was C. A nickname that followed her through childhood, high school, and into the young adult she was becoming. C graduated from Evergreen High School in 2014, a bright, energetic spirit who filled every space she entered. By the time of her death, she was enrolled at the University of Toledo's Junior College of Business, majoring in human resource management. Ambitious and driven, Sierah was also interning at her uncle's metal stamping business, taking real steps toward building the career she dreamed of. Sierah wasn't just another young college student. She was the kind of person everyone gravitated toward. Her infectious happiness and humorous spirit made her the center of her family's world. With a sassy, spunky personality, she had a special way of making her mother smile even when she messed up. In high school, her adventurous nature only grew stronger. She took on new challenges fearlessly, one of them being volleyball. Whether she was on the court or off, she radiated confidence. On July 19, 2016, the Joughin family had just returned from vacation. As they unpacked, Sierah was buzzing with excitement. She'd been planning to study abroad when fall semester started at the University of Toledo. Her mom wanted to discuss those plans. But Sierah, athletic and eager to get moving, had recently bought a bike she hadn't truly used yet. And that evening, she decided to take it out. She put her hair in a ponytail, wore shorts and a tank top, and looked cute and carefree. She told her mom she was heading to her boyfriend Josh's house, just a few miles away. She left the house with a casual promise that she'd see her later, unaware it would be the last time she'd ever say it. At around 10:15 p.m., Josh called Sierah's house. He had tried calling her multiple times, but her phone went straight to voicemail. When he asked Sierah's mother if she was home, she said no. Josh explained that Sierah had left his house before 7 and he hadn't heard from her since. Instantly, her mother felt a knot form in her stomach. Sierah always answered her phone. Her first instinct was to contact Sierah's grandparents, who lived nearby. But she wasn't with them either. Within minutes, the family was out searching. Sierah's mom drove relentlessly, scanning every roadside. Her aunt and uncle joined as well, terrified that maybe she'd been hit by a car. But no matter how much they searched, they found nothing. Back home, her mother turned to social media, hoping a friend had seen her. No responses came. Hours passed. Finally, unable to wait any longer, her mom called the police. An hour later, a neighbor phoned the family. County Road 6 was blocked off. Something was happening. They rushed out of the house, but officers wouldn't let them through or give them information. Her mother stood there, heart pounding, wondering if they had found her daughter. The local police eventually contacted the FBI. They promised the family updates as soon as possible. Rewards ranging from $25,000 to $100,000 were offered for any information leading to her safe recovery. Sierah's mom called every hospital in the region. Nothing. Then a call came from Detroit about a young woman who looked like Sierah. She had escaped from a moving vehicle and was hospitalized with broken bones. Nurses asked if Sierah had certain identifying marks. She had a scar on her calf, a belly button piercing. The girl matched the description, but it wasn't her. The family was devastated. Police arrived with an update. An officer had found a broken cornfield. Inside, he'd seen signs of a struggle. Then he spotted Sierah's purple bike. Near it were male sunglasses, female sunglasses, a bloody sock, a screwdriver, and motorcycle tracks. It looked like she'd been abducted right there. Detectives questioned everyone close to her, including Josh. They learned the two had been close since they were children. They skied together, spent holidays together, and even talked about marriage someday. Despite attending different colleges, they stayed committed. On July 19th, she left Josh's house at 6:30. Josh rode his motorcycle alongside her for part of the route, but Sierra insisted she could ride home alone. He reluctantly turned back. Detectives saw motorcycle tracks near her bike. They questioned Josh. He produced his helmet, showed he'd made it home, and his parents confirmed his timeline. He was ruled out. A resident came forward. 5 days earlier, he'd found a motorcycle helmet on the roadside. After hearing about Sierra, he checked it again and noticed reddish stains that looked like blood. The location matched where the bike was found. Police sent the helmet for DNA testing. Meanwhile, the community formed search parties, held a candlelight vigil, and refused to give up hope. Detectives conducted a door-to-door search. Soon, they arrived at a property not far from the abduction site, an acre of land with a small house, a trailer, and a barn. The owner was James Worley. When officers asked him about July 19th, he said he'd been riding his motorcycle, but it broke down. He claimed he'd lost a screwdriver and his helmet. The same items found in the cornfield. Detectives also noticed scratches on his face. He claimed they were from working on the farm. But investigators wondered, had Sierah fought back against him? At the station, detectives ran his background check. What they found horrified them. James Dean Worley was born on April 8, 1959, in Tacoma, Washington, to Florence and James Julius Worley. His father, a United States Army officer, struggled with alcoholism and was abusive toward James's mother. The marriage ended when James was just 5 years old. After Florence remarried, the family relocated back to the Midwest, eventually settling in Metamora, Ohio. Worley attended Evergreen High School and graduated in 1978. In the years that followed, he worked a string of jobs in the Toledo area, labor positions, farming work in nearby Delta, and seasonal employment on grounds crews for local county fairs. Academically, he had performed poorly. Worley later attributed his 1.59 grade point average to the fact that he'd been using and selling marijuana since the age of 14. In July of 1990, Worley's violent tendencies surfaced in a terrifying way. He ambushed a young woman, Robin Gardner, as she rode her bicycle in White House, Ohio. Using his truck, he struck her, then got out and hit her again, this time on the head. He placed her in handcuffs, pressed a screwdriver to her throat, and threatened to kill her if she continued to scream. He tried to force her into his vehicle. Gardner managed to escape and was rescued by a passing motorist. Worley was arrested, convicted of abduction, and sentenced to 4 to 10 years in prison. Despite the severity of the crime, he served only 3 years before securing an early release. In the year 2000, Worley returned to prison after being convicted of cultivating marijuana plants and possessing weapons while on disability, both considered felonies at the time. He was released again in 2002 after petitioning for early release. Following his second release, Worley attempted to rebuild a life. He started a small business out of his residence and became licensed as a trailer transporter. And now, decades later, detectives wondered whether he had escalated. Another witness in the area reported seeing a passenger van speeding through the roads that evening and provided authorities with a license plate number. When investigators ran the plate, they discovered it was registered to James Worley, the same man who had been convicted in 1990 for assaulting and attempting to kidnap a woman he had knocked from her bicycle. This connection was enough to elevate their suspicions. With the witness account, the vehicle match, and Worley's violent history, investigators swiftly moved forward. Armed with a warrant, police searched Worley's home. The house revealed nothing. The backyard, however, led them to the barn. Inside were stacks of hay bales. Officers removed them one by one. Hidden in a corner was a green crate. Inside were bags of women's underwear, stockings, and tube tops, labeled and sealed. Among them, purple panties stained with blood. Nearby, under a piece of plywood, they found a small freezer buried in the ground. When opened, a strong chemical smell like bleach poured out. More disturbing items surfaced. An air mattress covered in stains, zip ties, duct tape, handcuffs, and keys. Worley claimed he was starting a porn business. No one believed that. Everything was sent for DNA testing. Police arrested Worley. Detectives searched every inch of the property with cadaver dogs, drones, and helicopters. They drained the pond. They inspected the attic insulation. They expanded the search to neighboring farms. Then a farmer called. In his field, he'd found a patch of matted corn and a fresh mound of dirt. It looked like a grave. Police hurried to the scene. They processed the area carefully, but found nothing. Later that same day, at around 6 o'clock in the evening, the search came to a heartbreaking end. Sierah's remains were discovered in a shallow grave in a field along County Road 7 in Delta, Ohio, only a few miles southwest of Worley's home. They located another mound of dirt. Dogs alerted to the scent of decomposition. As investigators dug, they found human remains. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her feet were bound to the handcuffs. Something had been lodged into her mouth, blocking her airway. She could not breathe. It was Sierah. That night, her family received the call they dreaded. Their daughter had been found, and their world collapsed. Investigators uncovered recording devices scattered throughout Worley's property, suggesting a deliberate effort to monitor and document activity in and around the area. Cell phone records added another disturbing layer. Data placed Worley at the abduction site for nearly 2 hours during the exact window in which Sierah Joughin went missing. They also discovered that, following his earlier conviction, Worley had once told a court-mandated therapist that he had learned from each abduction he had done and the next one he was going to bury. With these findings in hand, authorities moved quickly. Worley was arrested on charges of abduction on July 22, 3 days after Sierah's disappearance. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office stated that Worley fit the profile of a serial offender and that there was a strong possibility he might have had additional, as yet unknown victims. Some investigators even feared that others could have been held or harmed on the property. The autopsy confirmed the cause of death as asphyxiation, brought on by the gag obstructing her airway. There was no evidence of sexual assault. While the precise moment of death could not be determined, her official time of death was recorded as 9 o'clock in the evening on July 22, the moment she was formally declared deceased by medical professionals. On August 16, 2016, Worley was indicted on 19 criminal counts and jailed without bail. The charges were severe, ranging from aggravated murder and kidnapping to felonious assault, abduction, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. At his arraignment, Worley entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. Prosecutors sought the death penalty for the aggravated murder count. After multiple delays in September 2017 and January 2018, and hundreds of potential jurors called, the trial finally began in March 2018 at the Fulton County Common Pleas Court in Wauseon, Ohio, with Judge Jeffrey Robinson presiding. Prosecutors alleged that Worley had been viewing pornography immediately before the crime. According to their case, he ambushed Joughin after encountering her on County Road 6, striking her in the head with his motorcycle helmet, potentially knocking her unconscious and leaving DNA evidence on the helmet. He allegedly waited in a nearby cornfield until darkness fell. During this period, prosecutors said Worley called his brother, claiming his motorcycle had broken down, but evidence suggested he was next to Joughin in the cornfield while making the call. Worley then allegedly returned home on his motorcycle, retrieved his van, and drove back to the scene. A witness observed the van speeding on the road. He then transported Joughin to a barn on his property, where she suffered further assault. She was hogtied, gagged with a plastic toy, and asphyxiated. A gag forceful enough to break a tooth. Her body was later moved and buried approximately 2 feet deep in a cornfield near his property. Worley denied ever encountering or assaulting Joughin. His defense argued that the items recovered from the barn, including underwear, handcuffs, and BDSM-related paraphernalia, were part of plans for a pornography studio he intended to establish. Worley also claimed the helmet and other evidence near Joughin's bicycle were left behind during a previous motorcycle breakdown, unrelated to her disappearance. The defense further emphasized that the DNA on the helmet was minimal, suggesting it could have been used by someone else. Additionally, a witness had reported seeing a man in red shorts crouched in the field, yet no red shorts were found at Worley's property, leading the defense to argue that the witness could not have seen Worley in the cornfield. Closing arguments in the Michael Worley trial concluded on March 26, 2018. The jury began deliberations that same day, and just 2 days later, on March 28, they returned a verdict. After less than 6 hours of deliberation, Worley was found guilty on 17 of the original 19 charges, including aggravated murder. Under Ohio law, the jury was tasked with determining whether mitigating factors in Worley's case justified a life sentence, or whether the aggravating factors of his crimes warranted the death penalty. Worley's defense painted him as a damaged man, arguing for leniency. Criminal psychologist Dr. John Fabian testified that the attack on Joughin was driven by sexual sadism connected to a fetish disorder, and noted that Worley had multiple diagnosed mental health issues, including sexual paraphilia disorder. The defense also suggested that Worley may have had an accomplice and hinted at an inappropriate relationship with his deceased mother, claims the prosecution quickly dismissed, citing a lack of evidence and pointing out that the gravesite could have been prepared by a single person. The prosecution countered by emphasizing Worley's average upbringing and his understanding of right and wrong, asserting that the severity of his crimes outweighed any mental health concerns. They presented audio recordings during the penalty phase, including conversations in which Worley's sister discussed past suspicions that he had been involved in the deaths of a prostitute in 2000 and an unidentified woman in the 1970s. Neither case had resulted in charges, but the recordings painted a troubling picture of Worley's history. Ultimately, the jury recommended the death penalty, and on April 16, 2018, Judge Jeffrey Robinson upheld the recommendation. Since April 19, 2018, Worley has been held on death row at the Ross Correctional Institution as inmate number A743593. His execution, originally scheduled for June 3, 2019, was delayed multiple times due to appeals. In July 2020, his attorneys filed a motion with the Ohio Supreme Court seeking a new trial, citing alleged failures in proving aspects of the charges, Worley's mental health, ineffective counsel, and alleged jury and evidentiary violations. They argued that the close-knit nature of the community had tainted the jury, making a fair trial impossible. The appeal was ultimately denied, and a new execution date was set for May 20, 2025. On the day of the scheduled execution, however, it was stayed due to pending motions from the defense. As of now, the case remains under review, and no new date for execution has been scheduled. Sierah Joughin's life was stolen by a predator who should never have been free. Her case sparked new laws in Ohio, including Sierah's Law, creating a violent offender database to protect future potential victims. Her family continues to honor her memory,